All right, everybody, how are you doing? Super excited to have you with me today. Today, we're going to be talking a lot about how to build a system for flipping deals repeatedly so that you can do this not just once, but do it time and time again. How to build a system for flipping deals repeatedly. That's what we're going to be talking about today. Okay, we're going to cover choosing a finding strategy you're going to do regularly, doing every single week. Finding properties even after you have a property. You're working on a property, how do you find that next one? Getting a good team that can take on some responsibilities and help you out. Well, what it takes is acquisitions and rehab and then dispositions, right? So there's kind of three. You've got to find the properties and you got to dispose of the properties. Acquire, dispose, right? In the end there, you may have to do some rehab in order to dispose that and to make some money. You're acquiring and disposing properties. That's the two sides of this that you're looking to do. Now let's talk first on the acquisition side of it, okay? Now, this is where you're acquiring properties. How do we go and get inventory? This process needs to be systematic. Part of the systematic is you know the numbers. You know for how many skip traces you do and people you talk to and calls that you have. That's what it turns into because you actually know the numbers. And then you also need to make sure you have financing for your deals. A lot of people do not have that set up in advance. The first thing you've got to do is make sure that financing is actually set up. Now, let's get into the rehab portion of this. This is the process of determining the work that needs to be done on the property, determining the colors, the style, what type of tile we're going to put in. Staying on time and on budget, which sounds easy, but it takes a lot of work to do that. Ensure the quality of workmanship is where it should be or where it actually needs to be in that quality of workmanship. Now, let's talk about dispositions. How do we dispose of these properties? This is all about getting the property sold for as much as you can and as fast as you can, possibly get that property sold, because remember, time is money. Every single day that goes by, you're paying interest and fees and taxes and everything else. So the faster we can get that sold for as much as we can is the ticket here. Making changes or lowering prices if needed is part of the dispositions role. So we're going to talk on acquisition. We want to create a system that makes your phone ring with motivated sellers. So you either need to create a system where your phone's ringing, or you need to put time and effort every week to getting deal flow, okay? It's either you've got to spend money on marketing to get your phone to ring, or you need to go and create opportunities by spending time so that you can get deal flow that's constantly coming in. So let's first talk about sellers calling you. How do you get sellers to call you? Well, one is paid advertisement. So you can pay for paid advertisement. That can be pay-per-click, that could be on YouTube, it could be whatever. It could be mailers where you're actually doing dropping mail. That could be postcards, it could be full letters, it could be blind offers. You can also send text messages. Now you have to skip trace to do that, but you could send those out and get people to call you, as well as sending emails out. So you're trying to get people to call you, but this has got to be a systematic approach, okay? Ways to actually get in touch with these sellers. If we do that, and how do we actually get in touch with a seller if they've called us? Now, we can put up classified ads, we can do Craigslist, we can do Facebook Marketplace, we can check out private auctions like auction.com or Williams Auction or Hubzu. These are all private auctions where you actually do get full title insurance and you do have the opportunity to inspect the property, unlike a foreclosure sale where you do not have those opportunities. Another one is Realty Bid. I would recommend that you're looking at these sites at least once a week to see if anything comes up in your area, because there's opportunities there. I have bought from auction.com. I bought from Williams Auction. I don't think I've bought from Hubzu and Realty Bid, but you should be looking at it and seeing what is out there in your area. Another thing to be acquiring properties is HUD Home Store. Now, I know this does not sound like this is an official website or something like that, but it actually is. HUD Home Store is where the FHA and the VA properties actually go. If it's something that they take back, it goes to there. And so that's a place you can actually find properties as well in your area and find them, what's available in your area today. Another place is treasury.gov. So this is going to be where there's tax liens and they have to take a property back. I have purchased a property through a tax sale, and that was an interesting process. I recommend checking out this website and seeing what is out there. So it's seized real estate. The other thing you do is just go knock on doors. You can just knock on doors and say, hey, I'm looking for a deal. Make phone calls, calling people, hey, how can we do this? Which you're gonna have to skip trace those first. Another way of finding these deals or building this system to acquire properties is called MLS Sniper, okay? MLS Sniper is how you find properties using MLS Sniper where you're going after specific ones, which means that they owe less on the property than what you can pay, so there's gonna be some money for them in those. Now, quick, just to back up on the auctions, there's two different types of auctions, okay? There's private auctions and there's public auctions. A private auction is where a bank already owns the property, and any of those types of things, as long as you get full title insurance and as long as you are able to see the property, then you can close on that property, which you typically get with what are called private auctions. Now, public auctions, on the other hand, are typically foreclosure auctions. I don't recommend that newer investors do foreclosure auctions. There's a lot of risks that are there. You typically can't see the property. You typically can't get hazard insurance. You typically can't get title insurance, and those things create really big risks, especially haven't seen inside the property. So we need to be able, as a lender, we want to be able to see inside that property. We want to be able to do a scope of work. We want to get full title insurance. We want to get full hazard insurance. And one of the cool things is with some of these private auctions, you get all that, okay? Auction.com's, Williams Auction, Hubzu, Realty Bid, you are gonna be able to see the property. You are gonna have a due diligence period. You are gonna get title insurance. You are gonna be able to get hazard insurance. All those things are happening in a private auction that is not happening in a public auction. So make sure you understand the differences between those two. Public auctions is something to stay away from unless you're like super experienced and you have your own cash. Private auctions is something you really should be looking into because you can have all those things that are necessary to get a loan on that property. Okay, MLS Sniper, we talked about where we're actually saying what properties are listed on the MLS, what properties actually have equity in them, that if I did make an offer, they would be able to accept that offer. Now, when we're trying to acquire properties, we're looking for two things. We're looking for equity and we're looking for motivation, okay? Equity and motivation is what we're looking for. First off, equity. Difference between what they owe and what the property is actually worth. That is what equity is. If they owe $100,000 and I can only buy the property for $90,000, there's no equity. If they owe $100,000 on the property and I can buy it for $150,000, there's some equity there where they can get some money, I can get a property. That's where it works out in the best situation. Is it worth it to fix up the properties? The other thing you've got to look at to make sure that you're going to be making a profit as well. So how to determine equity? Like how do I actually determine what equity is there? How much equity is there? One of the things that we do is what's called a reverse amortization. So basically, instead of amortizing out a loan, I'm saying, what was the prevailing interest rate the year that loan happened? Okay, well, that loan happened and prevailing interest rates for that year on average were 5%. Great. We're gonna assume this property's at 5%. We're gonna assume that he's made all those payments. If they would have made those payments with what's been paid to principal, how much would they owe today, assuming those things? And that's how we're able to do that. It's a mathematical calculation. For those of you that are members, you can see that when you log in on properties and get an idea of how much equity is actually in that property. But it's not just equity, because people with equity may not be interested in selling. So we're looking for people that have gone through life-changing circumstances. And that's where we get the actual motivation. We're looking for equity and we're looking for motivation. A change in life situation could be the property's just vacant. Like, why is it just vacant? It could be an involuntary lien. Involuntary lien basically means that something got liened on the property that you did not want to actually get liened. It could be a bankruptcy. It could be an out-of-state owner. It could be non-owners. It could be a pre-foreclosure. It could be a failed listing. So those are different types of things, and there's others, but those are things you can look at and say, oh, interesting. We've got a failed listing and we've got some equity. There's probably motivation. Let's see if we can go make a deal happen so we can have continuous deal flow coming in. The good news is that you can get access to all of this data. All of this data is readily available. We call this data meshing. Data meshing is basically where you take Motivation, you take equity, you mesh it together, and that becomes a target list that you're actually going to be going after. You take that list and you do a skip trace, and then you can actually call those people or you can text those people, okay? Some big mistakes that I see new investors making when they're trying to get a systematic approach to doing multiple deals. They spend time finding a deal, but they stop trying to find once they actually find one, which means they get that property fixed up and sold, and then they're back to actually finding new property all over again. So you want something you can do time and time again, even when you have a property that's under construction, because you don't know when you're gonna find that next deal. And if you stop, do that property, and then try and find again, you're gonna be back to square one, which is gonna take more time. If you're wanting to do them repeatedly, if you're just trying to do a deal every single year, help supplement some retirement, help you get a cash flowing property, no problem. But if you're wanting to do multiple deals a year, you've gotta keep doing one of those systems for finding properties on a regular basis. So create a system that will always be finding opportunities. Rehab bids from contractors. I see this. You've got to make sure that quality of workmanship is there. You've got to be there. It's got to get done on time. It's got to get done on budget. If those things don't happen, you're going to find yourself in a bad situation. And one of the things that can really help with this is what's called project management. You've either got to do the project management yourself, or you've got to hire someone to do the project management. Now, do you need a project manager if you have a general contractor? Yes, you probably need it even more if you have a general contractor. Would you need one if you just have subcontractors? Yes, you're gonna need project management. At the property once a week, the scope of work needed before the purchase, contractor service agreements, would they need to sign that, the rehab timeline with projects and dates. Okay, let's talk a little bit about dispositions. This is how we're actually going to sell these properties. How do we get this property actually sold? How are we getting feedback from people that have seen the property? Is the price too high? Is the door look horrible? Does the back grass need to get cut? Do we need to do a price reduction, or do we need to make some changes to the property to make it more desirable? I recommend that you outsource that by using a good real estate agent to do those things. But when I say good real estate agent, they need to be getting feedback. They need to be giving you feedback on a regular basis so you can make ideas on what you can do to get the property sold faster. Now, you have to build a team to make all this happen. You can't just do this on your own. So one of the questions is, who do I need on my team? Well, let's talk a little bit about that. I think the first person you need on your team is your significant other. Boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, whatever that is. You need your significant other. If there is a significant other, they've got to be on the same team. If they are not on the same team, it's always going to be a struggle. You don't have the same goals. You're not rowing in the same boat. You're going forward, she's going backwards, or vice versa, and you're just spinning in circles. So you've got to make sure you're on the same page. Next thing you've got to have is a hard money lender. If you do not have a way to fund these deals, there is no sense going out there and finding properties. So the first thing you've got to do is say, hey, can I get funding for these types of properties in the area I'm doing for the properties I'm trying to go after? I need to secure that first. Next, real estate agents, right? We've got to go out there and find a great real estate agent, a seller's agent that's going to be getting feedback. That agent can also be helping us to know what we need to do to the property to sell that, to get the most amount of money with the least amount of money putting into that. You're also going to need a traditional lender at some point. A traditional lender is going to do that 30-year fixed loan, completely different than a hard money lender. But if you're trying to hold some properties where you do like a BRRRR strategy, you buy it, you renovate it, you rent it, and you refinance it, you're going to need the traditional lender to come in and do that refinance for that long-term funding, or you just want to keep it as a rental property. Okay, subcontractors or trades. Subcontractors are going to be like plumbing, electrical, roofing, HVAC systems, heating and air conditioning systems. That's going to be different trades. You're going to need some of those because you may need them to fix things. You may need them to fix your rental property. You're also going to need a good insurance agent, and that insurance agent is going to need to know how to write vacant dwelling policies. Most people just call their Geico or their, whatever, whoever you want to say, Allstate or whatever. They call them and say, hey, I need an insurance policy, and they say, great. But what they don't realize is you need a vacant dwelling insurance policy, and very few people actually do those vacant dwelling. I shouldn't say very few people do it. It's a very specialized policy that most mainstream that advertise on the TV and radio don't do, okay? So it's there. You can find it. There's lots of them out there, but you're not going to hear about them on the radio. Oh, lastly, you are going to need that title company and closing attorney. You're going to need a place for the title work to be done. You're going to need a place for it to actually get closed. You're going to need those types of help depending upon if you're in a title state or an attorney state. That will make the difference on what you need to do. Now, having a great team can help take some of that load off so you can do your job on focusing on actually finding properties or finding good properties to be able to go after. So let's just do a quick recap here, guys. Okay, how do you build a system? You've got to choose a finding strategy that you can do. We talked about several of them that you can commit to doing every single week. You need to be finding properties even if you have already found a property so you can keep that. And you need to build a good team and delegate some of that responsibility over to that team, making sure that work is being done the way that it needs to be.